It's 500 BC, and you are standing at a funeral high in the mountains of Central Asia. Someone places cannabis over heated stones and smoke begins filling the space. The people here are doing this on purpose because they already know this plant can change how they feel. So, was weed one of the first drugs humans ever used to get high? Not even close, because alcohol had a head start so old that our ancestors were adapting to it millions of years before humans even existed. So, how did we go from accidentally encountering alcohol in fruit to inventing drugs that nature never made? Long before anyone brewed a drink, our ape ancestors were eating fruit that had fallen onto the forest floor. Once fruit becomes ripe enough, yeast can feed on its sugar and naturally produce small amounts of alcohol. So, an animal searching for an easy meal could eat fermented fruit without having any idea that alcohol was inside it. This happened for such a long time that around 10 million years ago, an ancestor we share with chimpanzees and gorillas developed a much better ability to break alcohol down, which means alcohol did not enter our story when somebody invented beer. Our bodies had been dealing with it before our species even existed. Eventually, humans learned how to stop waiting for nature to make it by accident. By around 13,000 years ago, people were deliberately making alcoholic drinks from grain. They had no clue what yeast was or why fermentation worked. They just knew that if they prepared certain ingredients and left them for long enough, the drink changed and so did the person drinking it. Once you can make that effect happen again, you can teach someone else how to make it too. Now, getting intoxicated is no longer an accident. It becomes something humans can intentionally repeat. Alcohol needed fermentation to create its psychoactive chemical, but cannabis came with one already inside the plant. By around 2,500 years ago, people in Central Asia were deliberately burning cannabis during funeral ceremonies. The cannabis they used also showed signs of unusually high psychoactive chemistry compared with what researchers would expect from typical wild plants. That means these people may have been choosing stronger varieties because they noticed which plants produced a bigger effect. They did not know what THC was. They did not need to. If one plant barely changed how you felt and another made the entire ceremony feel different, you would probably remember which one you wanted next time. But there is something much stranger happening here. Why can a plant change your thoughts in the first place? Cannabis did not evolve knowing that humans would eventually smoke it. The trick is that your brain already has a system that THC can interfere with. Your body naturally produces signaling chemicals that activate cannabinoid receptors in the brain. THC can activate those same receptors. It is basically like finding a key made for something completely different that happens to fit one of your locks. That is why the cannabis plant can change memory, perception, and coordination, even though none of those effects were created for humans. The machinery was already inside our heads. The plant just happened to make a chemical that could access it. Some substances could make reality itself feel different. Peyote is a small cactus containing a psychedelic chemical called mescaline. Indigenous peoples in northern Mexico and the southwestern United States have used peyote in religious ceremonies for a very long time. Mescaline can alter how someone experiences space-time and even their own body. Think about experiencing that before anybody understood the brain. You eat part of a plant during an important ceremony, and suddenly time feels wrong and the world looks different. You are not going to describe that as a molecule activating receptors. You are going to explain it using whatever understanding of reality your culture already has. That helps explain why some psychoactive plants became connected to religion and ritual instead of simply becoming an ancient version of partying. And where you lived decided which chemistry you discovered. People living in the Andes had access to a completely different plant, Coca. For thousands of years, people in South America have chewed coca leaves for their stimulant effects. Those leaves naturally contain cocaine, but the experience of using the leaf is very different from taking the purified chemical we now call cocaine. For most of that history, the drug was still trapped inside the plant. Then chemists in the 1800s learned how to isolate cocaine from coca leaves. And now humans had crossed another line. You no longer needed the entire plant. You could separate the chemical responsible for much of the effect. That also meant the drug could become far more concentrated than it was inside the original leaf. And humans had absolutely no idea where this was going at first. Purified cocaine became so accepted that it appeared in tonics and other products. It was even an ingredient in early formulations of Coca-Cola. So the drink that now gives you caffeine once had a completely different stimulant attached to its history. That sounds ridiculous today, but it shows how new this world was. Scientists had learned how to pull powerful chemicals out of plants before society really understood what repeated exposure to some of those chemicals could do. Separating the active molecule also gave chemists an even bigger idea. If you can isolate a molecule, then you can study its structure. And if you understand its structure, you can start changing it. Nature no longer gets the final say over what the drug looks like. One of the strangest examples arrives in 1938. A Swiss chemist named Albert Hofmann was studying chemicals connected to ergot, which is a fungus that grows on grains. He created the 25th compound in one series and called it LSD-25. At first, nothing happened that made anyone particularly interested in it, so the compound was put aside. 5 years later, Hoffman made it again. While working with it, he suddenly began feeling strange and went home. He experienced vivid changes in perception and suspected that somehow a tiny amount of the chemical had entered his body. A few days later, he deliberately tested the compound on himself. Then he had to get home. Because this was during World War II, cars were heavily restricted where he was living, so Hoffman and his assistant left on bicycles. During that ride, his perception became heavily distorted. His surroundings appeared to change and he felt as if he was barely moving, even though his assistant later said they were riding quickly. The first intentional LSD experience became one of the strangest bike rides in scientific history. And Hoffman had not been searching for a way to get high. He had been working on potential pharmaceutical compounds. The psychedelic effect was the surprise. That is a huge difference from the ancient cannabis user. The cannabis already existed, and humans discovered what it could do. LSD had to be created before anyone could discover what the experience even felt like. Then, chemistry moved even further away from plants. MDMA is a lab-made synthetic psychoactive drug. There is no MDMA tree waiting somewhere in a forest. There is no ancient fruit that naturally contains an ecstasy tablet. The molecule exists because humans learned enough chemistry to build psychoactive substances ourselves. And that finally answers the question from the beginning. How did we go from accidentally finding alcohol in old fruit to inventing drugs nature never made? The turning point was when we stopped needing the plant itself. Once chemists could isolate the molecule and understand its structure, they could eventually create new molecules that produced completely new experiences. The first humans found drugs by exploring the world around them. Modern humans can create one before anyone on Earth has ever felt its effects. If you want more weird science and history like this, make sure to like and subscribe. And tell me what human discovery you want me to break down next.